Good evening, Pastor Andrew with another video devotion about the attributes of God. And I want to talk tonight about a summary attribute of God, kind of grabbing all of those that we've talked about over these past few weeks and bringing them into one thing that encapsulates them. And that's God's blessedness. What does the word blessed mean, or blessed? We encounter it in a few places in the New Testament. However, behind our English word blessed are two Greek words, uh, which are eulogetos and makarios. We encounter eulogetos in a place like Ephesians 1:3, where it says, "Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ." And there the word has more akin with the word to be praised, or where it's more of a command or an invitation to praise this God. However, in other places, we encounter this word makarios, such as 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 11, which says, "The glorious gospel of the blessed God," or 1 Timothy 6:15, "the blessed and only sovereign." Now, this word makarios is quite interesting because we find that the pagan mythologies of the Greeks reserves this word makarios for the Greek gods. Human beings do not generally possess the quality of makarios. The gods do. And there, what is being referred to is generally their happiness within themselves. That the Greek gods, as far as they were concerned, alone possessed the quality of inner bliss and happiness. However, the interesting thing here is that if you are at all familiar with Greek mythology, you know that none of the gods exhibit this quality. They are jealous and vengeful and prideful and vindictive and lustful and greedy, and the list goes on and on. They are really just magnifications of the vices of human beings. So while it might be said of them that they possess makarios, inner happiness, in actuality they did not. However, when Paul the Apostle and others would write the New Testament, they would take this Greek word makarios, this inner happiness, and they would attribute it to God himself. He alone actually holds this quality of inner bliss and happiness. And I actually don't quite like the word happiness. I think it's a word that gets hijacked by our general use of it in our English language. Happy is a word that comes from the Old English word hap, which means chance. That's why we have words like happen or happenstance. So happiness, as we generally use the word, refers to an experience based in circumstance. If circumstances are going well, then we feel happy. However, inner happiness or inner bliss, or what we might say joy, is something that is not contingent upon circumstance. It's contingent upon inner health. God's happiness, God's makarios, is not rooted in the circumstances that surround him. We could say that God was equally makarios before the fall of Adam and Eve as he was after the fall of Adam and Eve, because God's happiness, his makarios, was not dependent upon, his blessedness was not dependent upon the obedience or disobedience of Adam and Eve, you or I or anyone else. It's dependent upon his inner perfections. This is where the word blessedness, makarios, happiness, whatever you want to throw in there, encapsulates all of the other attributes of God. God is totally and completely at peace and at bliss within himself, in pleasure within himself, because all of his perfections, all of his attributes fit together in perfect harmony with one another without any violation of any one of them, without anyone trying to impede upon the other. And so God is in a state of perfect wholeness at all times. And he exists out of that. So he is, you could say, the happiest being in all of the universe. That's why Psalm 16:11, for instance, says of him that in his presence is fullness of joy, and in his right hand are pleasures forever. He is the source of all joy and happiness, because he alone actually possesses them by necessity, in and of himself. And it's impossible that he is not the happiest of all beings, supremely happy at all times. But it's not just his inner source of happiness that we're looking at here. It's actually, he's also blessed or happy or delighting in, not just within himself, but also in all of the activities that he does. That's why, for instance, in Genesis chapter 1, it says of him that that whenever he created on the first day, second day, and so on, that he looked at his creation and it was good, and it was good on the second day, and it was good on the third day, and on the last day when he created Adam and Eve, it was said of that it was very good. God was delighting in his creation. Why? Because it was reflecting his own perfections. That's why. He was delighting in what he had made. It gave him great joy. We also find in the New Testament that God says of his son Jesus that he is in him he is well pleased. Why? Because Jesus was reflecting back to God all of God's perfections, all of God's attributes. And God, in the same way, delights in us, not because we are necessarily praiseworthy people, but because in us God sees reflections, sometimes dim reflections, but nonetheless reflections of his own perfections, his own, and he is in the process of conforming us more and more into his perfect image, so that we, without dimness and without failure, reflect back to him and he to us all of the perfections and joys of his own existence. And so God is blessed. All of his attributes sort of funnel down into this one thing. He is the happiest of all creatures. And that is why true human happiness is only found by conforming our lives to what God asks of us, to conforming our lives into the worship of God and the worship of Jesus Christ and submission to his authority and dependency upon him. Happiness, true human happiness, is found in no other place. We cannot be happy in ourselves because we don't have the inner wealth of spirit, of being, to be happy within ourselves. We can only find happiness in him. Augustine, the great theologian of ancient Christianity, once said it this way, perhaps best of all, when he said, if man is not made for God, why is he only happy in God? Or Blaise Pascal, to paraphrase him, once said that there is a God-shaped hole in the human heart, and that God alone will fill that God-shaped hole. We can try to fill it with a number of other things. None of them fit it. God alone is what we are made for, and it is in God alone that we will find true delight and true happiness. So let us labor together to seek that with all of our hearts, to do as God says in his law, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. God bless. Have a good night.